The handout is not really that important. It's really just something to get you thinking, because this is going to be a workshop where I'm going to present some ideas. I'm going to present some thoughts, maybe in an effort to help us expand our imagination a little bit. And then the other part of the work will be you, where you start thinking about, gee, what does this mean for my context, right? So that's all the worksheets are doing. So you could actually just use a notebook, and then we can have some more info. Okay, so let us get started, and they're passing around a prayer, which I love, so let's read that one. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Disturb us, Lord, when we are too pleased with ourselves, when our dreams have come true, because we have dreamed too little, when we arrive safely because we have sailed too close to the shore. Disturb us, Lord, when with the abundance of things we possess, we have lost the thirst for the waters of life. And having fallen in love with life, we have ceased to dream of eternity, and in our efforts to build a new earth, have allowed our vision of a new heaven to dim. Disturb us, Lord, to dare more boldly, to venture on wilder seas where storms show your mastery, and where, losing sight of land, we shall find the stars. We ask you to push back the horizons of our hope, and to push back the future in strength, courage, hope, and love. And we ask this all in the name of our captain, who is Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. So a little bit of sea imagery there. That is the prayer of Sir Francis Drake. I think it's apt for what we're doing, which is we're going to try to disturb ourselves a little bit here. The name of this class is Inside Out, and so it's going to be about talking. It's really an evangelism class. Okay, I just knew if we were going to pitch this to Episcopalians, I better not call it that. So. Congratulations, open the debate and switch. Okay. And in some ways, too, this class is almost like a part 2 or a prequel to a class I did here last year. For those of you who were here, I did a class on welcoming, right? So this is kind of a graphic example of how you might think of people coming into your church, right? They come in, they're invited in theory. They come and they're welcomed, right? We have welcoming, we have greeters, ushers, we try to get their names, and then we try to connect them to the church, to the life of the parish, get them involved in ministry, classes, so on, right? And so on. So last year we talked a little bit about welcoming, and I think a lot of our churches do a pretty good job welcoming people. Do you all think you do? We did a secret shopper program this last year, where we would send a secret shopper to churches in the diocese who wanted to work on their welcome. And they kind of came in and pretended to be a church shopper, right? And gave you a kind of grade, and then we would have a class and we would kind of unpack that. And a lot of the churches did really well. We are a friendly church, I think, in many respects. But then some of us are a church of friends, right? Meaning it's hard to sometimes break in. So I remember there was one church we did this with. I asked the church after it was over with, they were mortified that we had a secret shopper number 1. But when they learned that, I said, so what grade do you think he gave you? And they said F. I said, no, it wasn't that bad. He gave you a D-. You have hope. But they knew that they were a church of friends and not necessarily a friendly church. Anyway, we're going to step back to one stage and talk a little bit about inviting. What is a style of evangelism that works, I think, for the Episcopal Church? And this is just one idea. This is one slice of that pie, right? There's lots of ways to invite people to church, and this is just kind of one, all right? Why do we want to do this? I think, we all know the stats about churches that are struggling. We have a new world that we're living in. The decline of the membership in the Episcopal Church has almost gone in half since the 1960s. Locally, most of our churches are reporting a lower attendance this year than they did last. So this is an important thing for our churches to really start to engage evangelism. This is no longer the attractional church model where we can just put out our sign that says, the Episcopal Church welcomes you. There's something more that we have to start doing to engage our communities, and that's kind of what this class is about. One way of starting to engage our community. And before we start looking at some examples, I just want to ask this question. We use the term outreach a lot in the church, don't we? Do you all have an outreach committee at your churches? Yes? You have some of us even have an associate for outreach. We have one at the cathedral. We had a canon for outreach. But I've yet to see a canon for evangelism. Or a committee, an evangelism. Do you have an evangelism committee? Anybody? Couple? What? So what's going on there? What is outreach, by the way? What is the difference? Anybody want to hazard a guess? I know it's a big group. It's probably hard to talk. George.
It implies that most of the stuff we do in the church is inward, and that we have to organize any effort at all to do some sort of social action of even collecting some cans of soup for poor people or socks for poor kids at Christmas or something. We come up with some little project to satisfy ourselves that we've got something outside the church.
Okay, so I want to translate that. Outreach is doing something outside the church for the benefit of others. He mentioned sock drives, shoe drives. Anybody collect shoes for the Maundy Thursday event down in Ocean Beach? Many of the churches did. So outreach applies. Anybody else want to offer? I think that's reasonable. I think outreach is about service in the community. It's about reaching outside of the church as opposed to in-reach. To make an impact in your neighborhoods or in your communities, and sometimes overseas. So what's evangelism? Same thing, I heard? I see someone shaking their head no. Anybody has a guess? Yeah?
Taking Jesus out into the community.
Taking Jesus out into the community.
Yeah, so it's more specific than just doing certain programs. It's putting a faith-based spin on it. That's what my understanding of it is.
Right, so faith-based approach to connecting. Yeah.
That's something Baptists do.
Something that Baptists do. Do we have any former Baptists? Help us answer this question? Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to say I'm a former Baptist for 35 years, so I understand.
What's your answer to that? Former Baptist.
Pardon?
What is evangelism as a former Baptist? Help us.
Well, you can associate. I mean, you went out to your neighbors and you made them come to church. I mean, the guilt was unbelievable.
Guilt. Going out to your neighbors and giving them unbelievable guilt. Yes.
Saving the bushes.
I ran across a definition once, and I don't remember who it was attributed to, but it was one hungry person showing another hungry person where you get food.
Oh, 100
Spiritual.
spiritual food. 100 people offering another 100 people where to get spiritually fed.
Hungry.
Hungry. Okay. Sorry. That sounds a little bit like outreach too, doesn't it?
You know, outreach is going out and explaining to people. We're having this program in my church. Would you like to come? We're having a test. We're having representative of the health department in here, or maybe Medi-Cal or the insurance, and we're also passing free food at our church.
So is that outreach or is that evangelism?
Ouch, that's out. You know,
Outreach is
reaching out,
reaching out and
inviting them in and taking out food to them because they're needy.
So reaching out to invite them to church programs in your church.
They have their own church. Some of them have their own church, so I don't want to drag them in.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. One more.
For me, it might be the difference between what we do and what we say. And what we say is more of a one-to-one relationship.
So the difference. So is it perhaps the difference between what we do and what we say? Outreach is what we do. Evangelism maybe is what we say. Although what's that famous quote about preach the gospel?
Necessary.
Only it's all like absolutely necessary if you use words. We love that part. No. Okay. All right. So anyway, my point is I don't think we have a really good understanding of evangelism, how relates to outreach. We talk about outreach, we kind of blend the two together. I actually think we've kind of defined evangelism out of our vocabulary, in kind of an Orwellian way. We don't really know how to talk about it, so we, as a consequence, don't really do it. We don't make it part of our agenda. But I would suggest that the two things overlap. If you want to think about it broadly, outreach is perhaps about going out and serving in the world, loving and serving in the world, and evangelism would be about spreading the gospel, the good news of Jesus. Those two things are not totally separate, but so they overlap, right? But you can do outreach and not do evangelism, right? And I think some of us might, we're probably good at that in our churches. You can do a shoe drive and have a lot of shoes collected and have somebody deliver them to folks who need them, maybe not even in your community, and you never need them. And maybe they don't, unless they're told by the folks who gave them those shoes, they may not even know that it was a church all the time that collected them. But we know, it makes us feel good, and it's good work. I'm not saying it isn't. But that may be an example of outreach that isn't necessarily evangelism. And then, of course, there might be evangelism that isn't necessarily service to the poor, right? Pastoral, maybe, can you imagine pastoral care to a neighbor, being present with friends, sharing your faith on Facebook, talking about, not inviting people to a church event, but maybe talking about something that happened in your life and how your faith gave you a way of dealing with it in a way that you wanted to share with people. Yeah.
Yeah, I would suggest that outreach is really one of many forms of evangelism.
Yeah.
Because evangelism is spreading the good news, and outreach is reaching out to the least of those, among other things.
Yeah.
And that's good news. So I would think that's really a form of evangelism, not so much a versus.
Yeah, that's good. I would actually say all of our church work is a diagram, something like this. Our music programs, our art programs, our education programs can be outreach. They can be evangelism, certainly. I did a class on your finances, faith and finances, and we advertised it in the community. And people came. I had a Muslim there. I had folks that didn't come to church came because they wanted to get that material, but it was presented in a faith context, in a kind of spiritual context, and I wasn't going to change that part. And so that was, I think, an opportunity for evangelism. But that was technically our formation program. Part of this is I want to start getting us warmed up to the idea of evangelism. I'd like us to think of ourselves all as evangelists. Yeah.
How would you explain it?
Sorry?
Give me a meaning.
Give me a what?
Give me a meaning of what the two combined together.
Well, I think Wes gave a pretty two combined together. Well, serving folks at the same time, and witnessing the fact that this isn't just a civic act of helping you. I am doing this because it's a response to my faith. It's a response to my love of Christ that I want to seek and serve Christ in you.
If I talk to my neighbor and she's sitting there crying, and I go up to her and talk to her and pray with her.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to show a video I came across because I thought it was a parody on Saturday Night Live, and it really is a legitimate thing. So if you're confused about how to do evangelism, all your questions will be answered with this simple program, because we like to do that in church, don't we? We like to have programs in a box.
Christians agree that sharing the gospel is extremely important, but many never do because they fear not knowing what to say. The School of Biblical Evangelism by Ray Comfort and Kirk Cameron is your complete guide to sharing your faith. Learn how to overcome your fears, answer the most common questions, and take part in the work of saving the lost.
Watch this as Ray speaks to a fairy named Sybil who does not believe in Christmas
Very beauty.
or Easter.
Sybil, if there's a heaven, are you going to make it there? Are you a good person?
Generally, I'm a good person. I would assume that if there is a heaven, I would make it there, but...
Let's have a little test, okay? We'll go through some of the 10 Commandments. You remember what they are? 10 Commandments?
Most of them.
Do you know any?
Thou shalt not kill.
Ever killed anybody?
I have not.
Ever hated someone?
You
ever lied in your life, even once?
I have.
So what do you call someone who tells lies?
A liar.
Have you ever stolen something, even if it's small?
Yes.
You call Have you ever done that?
Sure.
So, Sybil, listen to this. By your own admission, I'm not judging you. You're a lying thief, a blasphemer, and an adulterer and hunter. So if God judges you by those 10 commandments on the day of judgment, do you think you'd be innocent or guilty?
Guilty, but
So what's going to happen to you after you die?
Well, hopefully my soul goes to the afterlife in heaven.
So everyone goes to heaven.
Hopefully, but I don't think that way, logically.
So where are you going? I mean, are you confident you go to heaven? Are you a good guy? Are you a good person?
I try to maintain and try to be one, but, we all lose sight along the way.
So you're a bad person. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I'm not a bad person.
Are you evil?
No, I'm not evil.
You know Jesus called his disciples evil?
He called his disciples evil.
Are you a good person morally?
Morally, I would definitely hope I was. I mean, I set my standards high, and I like to reach my goals high, and
See how high your standards are. How many lies have you told in your life?
How many lies have I told in my life?
Have you ever stolen anything in your life, even if it's small?
Yes, sir, I have.
What do you call someone who steals things?
A thief.
So what are you?
A thief.
Oh, a lying thief.
A lying thief.
School of Biblical Evangelism is a full-blown online evangelism course. It'll help you overcome your fears. It'll help give you the answers to the 100 most commonly asked questions and objections to the Christian faith.
All right, so our work is done here. Get online now. Well, that kind of evangelism, that kind of in-your-face, challenging, those are all the things that we scare us about that word, right? It's the high pressure, guilt, trip, all that kind of stuff. What's wrong with that kind of evangelism? And that's obviously an extreme caricature, but underneath it, what's wrong with that? What feels wrong with you, I should say?
Too literal.
Promoting judgment? Yeah. Right, promoting judgment, and it kind of cuts the conversation off. I saw another hand. Fear-based, yeah.
I'm going to say what she said, except the other part is it promotes the idea that a single person can judge you. God is the only person.
Yeah, if you follow their dialogue, it goes further and creates the metaphor of God as basically a judge in a criminal trial. Yeah, it's lovely.
It really doesn't have any concern or interest in the other person. It just simply fires at them some questions to put them in a trap so that you can close the trap on them. It's not, if they're trying to entrap the person, they're really not interested
It is.
in helping you.
It's almost like their style, right? That sort of ridiculous style does feel like a deposition. I used to be a lawyer, and that's how you would cross-examine someone. It's basically a cross-examination into your faith. Right, so there's no conversion really there. Yeah.
There's no mention of salvation. There's no mention of compassion. It's just attack.
Set you up to admit that you're wrong, so you so you'll have a desire for the get out of jail free card. Right. Yeah. Any new ones?
Instead of posing questions to people, each one of those people is going to leave there feeling bad, feeling worse about themselves.
Yeah, they're not walking away from that encounter with a positive impression of Christians, right? So if you look at statistics, something like 80% of people will say Christians, and this includes Christians in the survey, consider Christians to be judgmental and hypocritical, right? Those are the two biggies, and those kinds of encounters don't help that. Any new comments?
I was just going to say that it completely cuts the dialogue off.
Cuts the dialogue off.
So you're not learning anything about, there's no exchange there. And I think if you're going to effectively be an evangelist, there's got to be an openness and an exchange.
Yeah. Although in fairness to them, I would imagine there would be some ongoing relationship if they said yes to the proposition.
Yeah. It's talking about what's going to happen to you after you die. Nothing's relative about how you're living.
Yeah.
And
right.
it talks like they know what happens to people when they die. Are you going to go to heaven?
Yeah, so it's all about where you're going to go when you die, and it sets up a kind of thing that we've got the secret magic. We've got the answer. I think these are all really great, and I think these are the reasons why Episcopalians get a little nervous around evangelism. So much of it is in the style that doesn't work for us. And I think one of the underlying points here is that it's a style of the gospel that's all about belief. You need to adopt my beliefs. I've got a belief system here that I want to share with you because you need to adopt it, right? And what does that say? Have you ever introduced yourself to somebody saying, with that kind of approach, because what are you really saying about your beliefs? They're no good. Right? I've got an improved model of beliefs, and you need to own mine. You need to check mine out because there's something wrong with you, as is, and I've got the answer. We use that term unchurched, and I don't like that term, unchurched, because it's a way of actually almost saying something like that. That you're uncivilized, uneducated, unclean. So this idea that you need to come to church to get like me, so you can get fixed, be saved, and all that stuff. And that's really not our theology as Anglicans, as Episcopalians. So what I want to suggest is, that's kind of a lead-in to this inside-out idea of how we might turn our churches inside out, because it's an opportunity to share our faith in ways that gets away from that. How did Jesus approach the initial disciples? Did he lay on them, here's, by the way, here's who I am, here's the beliefs, you need to follow me. You need to sign off on these and get with my program. Did he do that? It was kind of like, why don't you hang with me? Follow me, right? And we'll see what happens. And over time, the disciples started to get an understanding of who Jesus really was through their interactions with him, through their relationships, through their experiences they had. And even then, they didn't always get it right? In fact, they most often didn't. But that's the kind of thing I want to suggest for us, that maybe there's a style of evangelism for the Episcopal Church that works with us if we think about ways of being relational, being incarnational, engaging with people. Some of the stuff we're going to talk about is kind of risky. It's kind of scary. That's maybe a good thing. If we're comfortable in our evangelism, we may not be really doing it. It's comfortable to buy a package of socks at Costco and bring it to the church, and then have the church then deliver it to somebody that you never meet. And that's safe. You don't have to get out of your comfort zone unless you talk to the clerk at Costco. You can get away with that interaction and never even talk to him. Right? And one of the concepts from this morning, fun. These ideas are things that are supposed to be fun. So let's think about evangelism, how it might be actually fun. Formational. What are we learning about ourselves? What are we learning about our faith when we do some of these things? We'll talk about that. And certainly transformational. So I'm going to go through a couple examples, and they're really here again to stimulate your own ideas. And this would be a chance to use this handout. Is there any more to show up? Yes, some more showed up if anybody needs them. Maybe Kevin? Thanks. So one way that's easy, I think, that avoids some of the negativity around evangelism that we think about is how can we as a church or as a people of God be a blessing to the community, be a blessing to our neighbors. So how many of you here do a kind of blessing of the animals at your church? Everybody does that, right? So sometimes it's not always about doing something new. Sometimes it's about doing something we already do and doing it differently. So what if we were to take blessing of the animals and take it into, instead of having people have to come to the church, maybe we take it into dog park, dog beach. What about a veterinary clinic? As people are bringing their pets in for an operation, blessing of the pets on those moments. Those would be incredible pastoral moments, don't you think? This is something, I don't think we do this, I don't know about this in San Diego, but in parts of the country, motorcycles are a big deal. This is a major ritual to go and bless the motorcycles once a year. Microphones.
To add to that, I started a pet partnership with people that are very attached to their dogs, cats, whatever.
A prayer chain for pets.
Right.
Yeah. how does that engage the community?
Because there's a lot of people, a lot of different religions that they want to be part of.
And how do you get that out to the community?
Just talk to people.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's always the trick. How do we get our neighbors to know about that? That's good, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. How about, this is, down at the cathedral, we're right across from Balboa Park, and we have races there all the time, and they cause a major problem for the attractional church, because the attractional church is trying to get more people, as many people into those pews every single Sunday as we possibly can, and these races create a traffic problem, don't they? They close roads. We lose parking spaces. We have to send out a warning to everybody ahead of time. By the way, there's going to be a Susan Komen race for the cure. And the subtle message there is, you may want to stay home, you know? So the attractional church these kinds of events can be a bother. They can actually, sadly, be a nuisance sometimes. You can look at them and say, oh man, it's going to make it hard to get to church. So what's going on here? You're using that as an opportunity. I mean, wouldn't it be great if all your churches, I mean, some of those races that happen at the cathedral, there's 50,000 people right outside our door. You know, talk about every church in the world would want that kind of publicity, right? No ad you can run, by the way, will never get you that. That's fantastic. So how can you engage with what's going on, right? So this is kind of from the missional church model, where the missional church is saying, you know, it's, did anybody hear Reggie McNeil when he was at the convention a couple years ago? Anybody? Yeah? Yeah. So the message from the missional church movement, you heard about it this morning a little bit, is that you know, we need to start thinking differently about the church's role, the church's mission. Maybe it's not always about getting people excited about us and what we're doing and getting them to come to us, but rather getting excited about what God is doing already in the community, right? So there's a slogan. It's the church is the mission of the church. The church doesn't have a mission, but God's mission has a church. So that's a bumper sticker, Facebook message right there for your online posting. But yeah, so that's the idea is God's mission has a church. God's mission is already happening, right? These folks are getting 50,000 people are getting together to raise money, and you know, they sometimes wear signs with their loved ones on their backs. And that's God's mission happening, isn't it? And it would be sad if our churches look at that and say, well, that's going to cause a parking problem, right? So part of what I want to try to do here today is just expand your imagination, because I don't know in your individual context what your version of that little story is. But you probably got it. I'm sure you do. And so I'm commissioning you to be the fly in the ointment. So the next time you're at a vestry meeting or something like that, and you see these kinds of moments happen, you try to think differently. How could this challenge be an opportunity? You know, so here's a priest who's standing out there, you know, and just blessing people as they go by. You know, I thought, well, why don't we, you know, those healing stations we have with the candles, what if we were to take those and wheel them out and put them on the sidewalk and offer healing prayers for anybody in that race, or any of the loved ones that are there to support them? Who knows? Create little pastoral moments or sacred space on the sidewalk and just see what happens. That's risky behavior, you know? Maybe it's against the law. Maybe you get ticketed by the police. I don't know.
We got water bottles labeled holy water.
Somebody suggested handing out water bottles with holy water on it.
Labeling holy water.
A lot of people will in that moment, here's a contrast, though, right? So some churches, the attractional church, is going to look at an event like that and say, well, let's set up a table and we'll hand out water with our logo and our website on it. And maybe we'll hand out chapstick or swag, stuff. Maybe they don't want, but we're trying to promote ourselves. We're going to take advantage of these 50,000 people out there. That's kind of self-promotion, isn't it? It's actually not bad self-promotion, right? I mean, I like marketing as much as the next person. But trust me, folks see that stuff and they know, they see for what it is. It's you trying to suck off their event to promote your church for your agenda. So it's really not that far removed from fellow in the video is trying to get you to buy into his agenda about God without you really asking for it. So I think a blessing, healing prayers, hugs. How about signs? Free hugs. Hannah Miller did that, or Hannah Wilder did that during one of these events. Big sign, free hugs. Right? No even religion there, just free hugs. But the engagements, the conversations, you meet people, sometimes it's for a few seconds. Here, you got parades in your neighborhood. Do your communities have parades or events that you can connect with? This is the Pride Parade last year, the Gay Pride Parade in Hillcrest. And that's Dean Penny, Dean at the Cathedral. This year they went along the parade route and they were doing the blessing. So we had to go to the parade, but along the way we just drew water to people. And I think a lot of those people were happy to have it. It was a hot day. And people were scared. Some of us were concerned, oh my gosh, is that going to be too much? Is that too much proselytizing somehow? But you got no complaints, and people loved it. There's a great story that somebody from this church who was there told me about two women who were running along the parade route. There's like something like 150,000 people in this thing. It's jam-packed with people. And they're running along this parade route, trying to get through the crowds, hand in hand, to catch up with Dean Penny, to receive that blessing. When I tell that story, my voice starts to crack and I get chills. I'm telling you, there's no words to describe those kinds of moments. And actually, there's no words going on in those moments. What are those moments in your context? How could you create those kinds of moments? It's so powerful to go to the people who would never come into your church. It's so powerful. And what does it do to you when you do that? How does that change you? That's a transformational part. So if you have your hand out, you might want to think about that. I have that on the front here. What are some races, parades, civic events, holiday celebrations, art walks, whatever. What's going on in your neighborhood that you can connect with? How can you take some of the events that you're doing in your bulletin, that you're always trying to get people to come to, that, let's face it, the people that come are generally people we know. It's us, and we're all real busy going to all of our events, right? We keep each other really busy in the church. This is the busy church. It wasn't one of the 4 models or 3 models that was displayed. But how might we take some of that energy that we're doing around those events and partner with people in the community? Maybe do it in the community. Maybe instead of doing a concert here, we do the concert in town or at a school or who knows what. What are the partnerships that could form? What are the people we would meet when we do that? So it's moving from getting the attraction church, which was all about getting folks here, to us engaging the community. So how can we take someone, we love to do worship in the Episcopal Church. How can we do that? This is Ashes to Go. Everybody's doing Ashes to Go these days.
And St. Paul's Cathedral took Ash Wednesday to the streets today. Members of the church went to 4 locations around the city to offer Ashes to Go. Ashes to Go gives people the chance to take part in Ash Wednesday if they can't make it to church. It's a new approach to bring this tradition to people.
We believe that the church needs to come to the people. There is a new age upon us, and there's no point in people in the church just sitting there waiting for people to come to our beautiful buildings. We need to be amongst the people, and we need to reach out and offer God's love and forgiveness to people who might not otherwise ever experience it.
Ashes to Go was first done last year and is now done across the U.S. and in England.
So Ashes to Go. Who's doing that in their churches these days? Everyone's doing that these days, right? Good. Are lay people doing that in your churches? Or is that just a clergy-driven event? Lay? Yeah, good. That was Dean Penny again, because we want to promote the boss. But in reality, we had something like 15 teams around the county And at that point, you're out of clergy, right? So you're using lay folks. And again, anybody have any fantastic stories from Ashes to Go? Yeah?
I discussed this with a presentation. She said it was discussed. This is what every year is something different.
Yeah.
This year, the guy, this was on the the guy just kept on walking back and forth. He's interested in it, he doesn't know what to do. So she goes up to him, finally she engaged in a conversation. He said, I'd like to do it, but I'm a Protestant.
Yeah, so somebody's walking around asking to go, they're walking back and forth, they're being kind of sheepish about it all, finally walks up and says, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, I'm Protestant. Last year, first year I did this, I was on the news as Catholic priest, Chris Harris, and it's all about Catholics taking, I just can imagine what they thought.
I just had a story about the Ashes to Go. My parish takes part in that. And I knew I was going to be going to Ash Wednesday service later that evening. And so I was just walking with my friend down the street, completely forgot it was oblivious, to that. We were walking down the street together and I saw my priest there, in which she's like, oh, what are you doing here for Ashes to Go? And I'm like, no, but I'll take it. And it had a really great effect on me personally. So it was more transformative for myself.
As the recipient.
And then I was able to kind of bring my friend into it who was not participating in it, but we had a very long conversation about just our church and, my church and why we do that.
Right. And did you have a good answer for that, by the way?
I said just so that we could reach more people. And touch their hearts.
That's always a good. She was just sharing a story about how she received ashes on Ash Wednesday out on the streets, and her friend was with her. And that act, even though their friend didn't receive ashes, it sort of opened up a dialogue with her about their faith and what is this all about. Why would you do that? That reminds me of a story we had. One of my parishioners, she's our head greeter, the most gregarious, extroverted, wonderful, outgoing person you've ever met. I asked her, Pat, you're going to do Ashes to Go with us, right? She's like, no. Let me get back to you on that. She finally said yes, and I was like, I can't believe it. I thought this would be right up your alley. And she says, well, Chris, you got to realize, none of my friends go to church. And none of them know I go to church. She was in the closet as a Christian, right? And I would be mortified if any of them saw me. Because I'm in these book groups, and we talk about things, and I've heard what they say about Christians, and I just keep my mouth quiet. So no problem, Pat. I'll tell you what. The odds of any of them seeing you, I know. So why don't you do? We'll put you downtown in front of the courthouse. For the team in front of the courthouse, which is a great team, because you get tons of traction there, lots of media coverage, whatever. And guess who has jury duty that day? One of her friends, and it was the one that she was the most worried about. And this huge exchange. She had never worn vestments before either. This was like so out of the box for her. Being out on the streets, wearing vestments, didn't understand exactly how to put them together. And she's out there doing Ash Wednesdays with this friend of hers that she was mortified that she would see her, and offered her ashes, and she took them, and they had this incredible conversation, like what you're saying. And I'm telling you, Pat has not been the same person since. It changes you. You have these moments. At the park, we had a Muslim come up to our group that we had at Balboa at the zoo, and say, I'm Muslim, but I want to receive ashes from you. This is another one of these. In solidarity for those Coptic Christians, right? Here is, what's going on here? Anybody do Stations of the Cross? That's kind of a fading practice, is it? I don't know about you, but we're getting maybe 12 people at the cathedral these days for Stations of the Cross. It's a wonderful devotional during Holy Week, during Lent. But here's a version of it where you go downtown, or you go into the community and engage a kind of a deconstructed, updated version. So here is, I don't remember which station, this is station 7 or 8, where Jesus falls. you've got these high school kids recreating this, reenacting it there in the corner. And there we are at Horton Plaza in front of Levi's. I'm sure they were thrilled with that. And meditation wasn't the one out of the Book of Common, a typical devotional. It was really a comment about, Jesus has fallen in the same way that so many millions of Americans fall down every year under the burden of consumer debt. So we're out there engaging that real-world topic, and you just can't help but draw a crowd. Who wants to hear that? So we went around to different stations, and had themed topics. Why do you do that in your community? What is something? Are there folks that you might partner with? Could that be an ecumenical thing? Could that be something you partner with community organizations to help them? Maybe they sponsor the different stations. So you just all come and you just see what they've put on. Who knows? And of course, there's the Maundy Thursday event at ECC, where we wash the feet of homeless folks down there. But also, we give them shoes, we give them food, we give them haircuts, we give them vaccinations for their pets, all kinds of services, legal services, medical services, and thank goodness we do that every week. It's not just a special event that we do for the media once a year. It's something that goes on all the time at the Episcopal Church Center in Ocean Beach. But this is one we do around Maundy Thursday. I know a lot of people say, well, Christian, our church participates in that. How do you guys participate? Well, we always get shoes together and send it down to the Episcopal Church Center. Okay, that's good. But I just want to suggest that that really wasn't the goal. If Nancy Holland was here, she would probably tell you that really wasn't the goal of the Maundy Thursday foot washing in Ocean Beach. It wasn't to get all the churches in the diocese to perpetually send us shoes. It was there to be a kind of inspiration, basically what this class is right now, to you, to think, what might be your version of that in your context? It was there to expand your imagination and your own mind about how might you engage your community in a way, okay, that's something you're already doing. Does that make sense? So, that's part of your homework. What are the kinds of events in your community? What can you put on? How can you bring some of your worship practices? Things like Ashes to Go, things like this. They're kind of safe, right? In a way, they're scary, but they're also kind of safe because you're going out into the community to make your investments. You're doing it because it's Ash Wednesday. You have some authority. You have some excuse. Imagine going out and doing Ashes to Go. How about Blessings to Go on a sidewalk on any regular day? And there's no special event going on. So some of these things can be just excuses, opportunities, covered, things that make it a little bit more safe to be a little more risky. And then another one I want to show is you can kind of, these are more service oriented, so this is getting more into the outreach portion of that Venn diagram. This is a church up in Long Beach, or Huntington Beach, that's run by a friend of mine. Check this out. Imagine
Laundry is really the modern day foot washing. Laundry Love is basically a group of people who gather together once a month in a laundromat to facilitate the laundry of folks who are homeless or in need or in transitional housing, folks who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford to have their laundry done. We literally are doing a maximum of 600 loads of laundry each month. Not only does it benefit this community of people, but it also takes the worst day for a small business owner and turns it into his or her best day. That was formed in order for the church to reach out to a group of folks who would never otherwise start doing one of our traditional traditions. We have had a few guests from Laundry Love come to our church, but that's not the point. What we're doing is building our church from the inside by serving this constituency of people. That's what we feel like our call, our mission is, to make a love-spreading difference in the community in which we're situated and beyond.
possibility that you have to engage in order just to walk in because it's a little chaotic and it's pretty extroverted, and sometimes it's kind of scary in a good way. There's a lot of love in the room, but there's also a lot of courage in the room too. What we've seen is our church has just really come alive with this opportunity to serve in our community in a very practical way. It's just a really right time for communion, for the development of like real deeper relational intimacy that you see taking place in the middle of a laundromat at Venice Beach on Monday night. One of the themes that we adopted early on at VATS is people are the new program. Any church of any size could pull off a laundry love. People have come to volunteer at laundry love, and then they've said like they've made relationships with people and have helped facilitate them finding housing. So the idea is that the program exists so that it would be an incubator for more personal, love-spreading, difference-making mission in our own individual lives. I feel very strongly that this is the modern day for Washington. You know, this is where we have an opportunity to get down and engage people on a level where they need to be served. There's this real development of connection and relationship that goes back and forth. And for some reason, washing machines and dryers really bring people together.
So there's the modern day foot washing, as Jimmy calls it. Any reactions to that? Cool, awesome, wow. What would be an obstacle in your imagination to coming to an idea like that in your church context? We did that this morning, right? He suggested what would be the obstacles to change. If you were to go to a vestry meeting or an outreach meeting at your parish and suggest something like this, whatever that works, whatever that happens to be in your context, what are the kinds of objections you might expect to hear? Anybody want to venture? Would they all just say, absolutely, let's go for it? Yeah. Who's going to organize it? Logistics? Yeah.
Maybe concerned about getting the owners of the laundromat on board.
Okay, yeah. Logistics around the but I'm looking for something not just related to that idea. Okay, I'm just using that as a metaphorical idea. I'm just going to suggest one of the obstacles we would have at the cathedral would be time. Another thing to do. Great idea, Chris, but where would we fit that in?
I think you hit on something there because as we're seeing our congregations shrink, the manpower, and I think you tend to find over and over and over it's the same people doing the task. You know, these great ideas come out that it's, you know, our manpower is smaller than it was.
We don't have the people these days. The churches are smaller for the reasons we mentioned earlier, and so we just don't have the folks to be able to pull something off like that because we're all so busy doing all the things that are keeping the church going. Does that sound possibly familiar? And it's a lot of the same people? Does that sound familiar? George?
That's why I like your idea of transferring what's inside the church outside the church.
Right.
I was thinking, like, for example, even if you didn't put on a whole Roman passion play, I think you could just simply transfer stations of the cross service to the shopping mall. Have people stand up and hold the stations, walk through them, you know, make a big circle around there, pass out booklets and like people are doing. I would be risky and be uncomfortable, but it wouldn't be that much more work to transfer to the mall, but it would be more work, but it wouldn't be an impossible task.
Right. So George is suggesting that you could take, so we're moving the calendar, but just moving the location. The calendar stays the same. We're still going to do the Station of the Cross, still going to do the shoe drive or something, but instead of doing it here at the church, we're going to do it in the community, so we haven't added anything. That's one solution. Yeah?
The only thing is that something like that you can invite your neighbors to and your friends that you know that maybe are not necessarily going to church because it's not an intimidating environment.
Yeah, so one of the benefits of things like this is that this is something that would be really easy to invite your neighbors to, isn't it? I can totally agree. We did a thing on evangelism a few weeks ago, and one of the stories I had was one of the easiest evangelistic acts I've ever did with somebody was to say, what are you up to tomorrow? Sorry. Nothing. You want to go down to Mexico with me? Mexico? What's going on there? Well, we have this orphanage called Dorcas House, and we're going to go down and do some art with the kids. And it's really awesome, and we're going to get tacos and blah, 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 and maybe get a margarita or two. And you should come down with us. Oh, you know what? I think I will. That does sound cool. It's an easy thing to invite people to because it's actually interesting. It's cool. It's like, and then, so now you're spending how many hours in the car with somebody, unpacking that experience on the way home, and you know, the good old road trip and all that. So it's great. So what's the obstacle? Yes, Simon.
The other thing is a great story about bodies of love. And that is that Bishop of Los Angeles ordained a deacon of that church in the laundromat, which was a controversial move in some of his, particularly his clergy. And I think one of the opportunities is two things. One is to rename what is sacred, and to I don't mean claim for us, but to re-recognize, if you like, recognizing the world is sacred. To do that, we might need to, in a way, deprogram the church, because it will come down to prioritizing.
Yeah.
But recognizing where the sacred's already happening.
Yeah, so it's recognizing that sacred space happens outside of the church as well. That's what's happening at Ashes to Go. That's what's happening in this laundry of love. You're creating sacred space on a street corner with a stranger you've never met, and you're making the sign of the cross on that person's forehead. I don't know the last time a stranger had invited you to touch their forehead, but there's an intimacy that happens. And then to invite them into prayer. You have any prayer requests? Is there anything we can pray for in your life? No, I'm good. Well, now that you mention it, you created sacred space right there in a way that I feel is sometimes more powerful than any other thing we could be doing in that moment. So maybe one of the ideas is that maybe sometimes, I know this is just a wild idea, okay? This is one of the wild ideas for the back page of your handout. 5 crazy ideas. Here's one that I pitched recently at the cathedral. Let's not do church once a month. I'm the development director. I know how much money comes in on a Sunday in the plates. That's a scary proposition for the attractional church. What would that do to our ASA? Blah, blah. So maybe that's not what you really do. But the idea is maybe you do church a little differently. Maybe it's a short morning prayer. And then we go out and serve together in all kinds of different ways. Kathy, where are you? Tell me your, this is a wonderful idea of a way that we could actually go and do service together.
Oh, well, this is something we're going to start, actually, in the next few weeks. It's a work party, group of 12 people, men and women, youth and adults, and we're going to go out to people's houses and we're going to go out to people's houses, and they will be referred to us by social workers, hospice people, clergy, anyone who knows of someone in need. And we will work from 9 to 12. 12 pairs of hands. It's amazing. I was in a group like this in Oregon, and you cannot believe what you can get done. We work with them for the whole morning, and then we also provide lunch, and we sit down and share with them. So I love it. And after the next month, we'll do an inreach, and we'll do someone from St. Bart's. And then the next month, go back out to the community again. It's lovely. It's transformational, and you get blessed as much as the people who feel like they're getting the service.
Yeah, you build friendships. You build a small group. We talked about small groups this morning. That's the blending of the two models we heard this morning: the relational model and the missional model, right? So you're doing both in those moments. Now you've created a group that knows when you're sick, and so if you ever have to go to the hospital, that small group is going to know about it, and they're going to be there. How many times have you had somebody come to you in church? I don't know. I get this, and say, Chris, I've been gone for a few months. Nobody came and visited me. Well, Well, we didn't know. The church has gotten too big. All of our churches are too big for that. Right? Unless you're a really small church, it's really hard to know who's missing. But a small group, you can connect. They know what's going on in your life. They can tell you what's going on in your life. They know about those tests. They know about whatever you've been struggling with. They have refrigerator rights when they come to your house. They can just walk right into the fridge, right? That'd be cool. Yeah.
I have a question. When you do those, like the laundromat or the ashes or anything, do you hand them a card from the church or anything like that?
Yeah, so she asked, when you do these kinds of events, do you hand out a card around the church? So if you were paying attention earlier, what's the answer to that?
No.
No? Yeah, maybe, or how about maybe? I'm not that but yeah, and so the point is that it can't be you can't do these things with an agenda. That's the point. Somebody mentioned it earlier, the problem with those old evangelism models that we can't stand is they're talking to you with an agenda. They're not interested in you. They're interested in their way of saving you, and they're moving on to the next, or whatever. So you can't do this kind of stuff with an agenda. This is not a church growth program. And if it is, then you need to rethink why you're doing it. I actually heard someone mention, Chris, we used to do a parade. We used to participate in that, but somebody decided that it wasn't worthwhile. Really? What was the grounds for it being not worthwhile? Well, we couldn't actually show that anybody new had come to the church because of it. Okay, that's the attractional church trying to use the attractional church scorecard to evaluate a missional church activity. So we have to think about, this is probably another forum, but a kind of a parallel track of how we do this.
Just for my own clarification, so you're saying that what we need to do is to be organic about it and more authentic with ourselves and our faith into the community.
Yeah, kind of, but let's face it, some of the stuff is stunts, right? Ashes to Go is a stunt. I own that. So for the folks that come up to us who have no idea what it is, it's like, what are you doing here? What is this? Is that authentic? Is that authentically me? Or am I doing a kind of a funky church activity, to kind of be an icebreaker, But the point of what you're saying is, it's not, you don't want to be there with and here's our flyer, because we're doing this because we want you to come to church, here's the times. On the other hand, we don't want to be so bashful about that. So the idea is to actually build some kind of relationship, authentic relationship. So when we were doing Ashes to Go up here in Poway, we were in front of a Starbucks and we met several people who shared with us, I've been looking for a church home. Well, I happen to have a flyer for you. Right? So there's a little bit of a distinction, the difference there. You put building a relationship first, some kind of connection first, seeing them who they are, right? It's the woman at the well moment. And then let the flyer come later. Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay. Good comments, you guys. Okay, so I want to end this. We got another 15 minutes, is that right? Okay, so far we've been talking about kind of church stuff. This is a lead-in, actually, what we were just saying. Church stuff in the world, right? Ashes to Go. Monday, Thursday. Stations of the Cross. Clergy blessing people. Those are all kind of church activities. Those are clergy-centric activities. I want to then shift this into something more closer to what Kathy was talking about, and that is, how can you begin to sort of think this way? What is your missional imagination in your life, in your neighborhood? How can you think about these ideas about how you might break the ice and relate with folks in new and different ways? So I'm going to show a little clip from to kind of be a bridge to that conversation. Alan Roxborough.
Hi folks, my name is Alan Roxborough, and you're part of conversations that are going on with us through TNN about why is it so important to get engaged in our neighborhoods. And I want to talk about that a little way in terms of 4 different reasons for it. The first is about what our churches were, what our congregations were originally. Most of our congregations, if you think about them, were actually built in neighborhoods. designed so that most folk could come and walk and be a part of the church that was in their neighborhood, like neighborhood churches. And the neighborhood was critical and important. And a long time ago, most of the people that you knew and were a part of lived in that neighborhood. But all of that's changed. It's gone. And as a result, most of our churches are now made up of people who basically drive in from somewhere else and only know the people that they meet in their church, and then they disperse into places where they live, and they hardly know anybody in the neighborhoods in which they live. As a result, many of our churches are slowly declining from inside out, and are made up of people who've known themselves for a very, very long time, and we've got to deal with that. We need a different way of thinking about church. So that's the first thing. The first thing is churches were designed to be places in the neighborhood, but over a long period of time that ceased to happen. The second reason why this whole being in the neighborhood is so important is because, as all of you know, in so many ways our societies have changed so dramatically. Some of you may even remember a time when it was just natural for people to come to church. They didn't know any different. That was part of their life. They came and were a part of the rhythms of church life. And as you know, almost all of that has gone. It's no longer normal or natural for people to come to church and be a part of church. And in fact, what a lot of churches are doing is that they're just working really, really hard to improve what they're doing, to make what they're doing more attractive and more attractional. But the bottom line is, most of what's going on inside of our churches no longer speaks to people out in the communities and the societies where they're actually not particularly interested in just coming to an improved form of what we've got. That's not what the society is. It used to be, but that's not where it is anymore. And so we've got to learn to ask some different questions. Not how do we improve what we're doing to attract people. Not that that's wrong, but we need a different question. How do we listen to hear what's happening to people in order to understand where they are? And that's going to mean us moving from a how do we get them to come here imagination to how do we go and enter and join with that sort of thing. The third...
I'm going to just move on to the next because it kind of set up what I was trying to get at. So the question is this: how might you be a missionary in your own context? So now we're not talking about your church in your community context. Now we're talking about you as a disciple in your context. What is your context? Neighborhood, work, those are family. Yeah. Those are the big ones. Yeah.
I'd say, for example, my own personal little example here. I go once a week to an outreach center where we distribute food, and I'm a caseworker. I speak Spanish, and a lot of the clients are English workers. And I had a gal one time say to me, I'd love to go to an art museum over in Palm Springs. I don't think she has a car, and she wasn't homeless, but she was there to pick up food. And I've been thinking to myself, she gave me the phone number. Would it be proper for me to call her and say, hey, you want to go? Or is that, am I supposed to be just the caseworker in this and not mix up socially?
What was your answer?
I haven't done it yet, but I'm drawn to doing it since listening to you.
Yeah, right, that's it.
And I'm thinking that's part of the mixture of what we're doing.
Exactly, thank you. So if you didn't catch that, she volunteers as a caseworker, and she's built a relationship with one of the folks that they're helping, and it's occurred to her, maybe I should take the next step in that relationship. But am I allowed to? But your heart is telling you something, isn't it? Yeah. So pray on that, right? Let that work on you. Something will come from that, right? Those are the moments. It's where we start to break out from program we're doing a church program, you're volunteering something that the church does, and it's good, I'm putting in my hours. So now you're breaking the third wall. It's like an actor who's now talking to the audience directly. The fourth wall, whatever that is. That's the missional imagination that we're trying to get you to think about. Yeah.
My husband and I first moved, we're from Temecula, and we had neighbors next to us who were in their 80s. She's now 88, I think. And the husband has since passed, and he had some real severe health issues with my husband and I. And my husband works at home, so we had to really help out. Okay, right next door, that's the first time we ever got to know them, was when my husband came home and had a lot of health things, and she was of the generation where she was telling us she didn't know how to put gas in the car. But the husband was no longer able to go out and do those things. So we stepped in and really helped her out for about a year and a half. And about 6 months after he had passed, she's that transition into doing things by herself, going banking and having to do special for the car in. But about a month or so ago, we still check in with her, but she has kind of started paying it forward. She said now she has found someone that, a former friend that she had known that had surgery and now needs meals, and so she has signed up now to go certain days of the week and take meals to this lady since, we had helped her. She says, I'm paying it forward to someone else.
Yeah, so that's a long story, but that's the post-communion prayer, going out in the world to love and serve, happening, right, in your neighborhood. Right next door. Yeah, I had that slide up of my, this is my neighborhood. I'm the blue dot, and when I first moved into my neighborhood, I went over and introduced myself to the neighbors. The guy across the street was an ex-Marine, and he was kind of like, I don't know, we kind of keep ourselves in this neighborhood. And I said, well, okay, no problem. I just wanted to say hello. And didn't get a lot of traction. And then his wife became ill, right? And sent over a nice care package. And that changed everything. And then it started to grow from there. The neighbor next to us who was convinced the two of them thought they didn't like each other because they didn't wave as they drove by. That was it. They never had a conversation. They were just imprinting this agenda that because they didn't wave, they must not like me, and so I'm not going to like them. And so they had a feud going on. Which, 2 minutes? Okay. So we invited them over for dinner, for an open house or something, and broke the ice on that. So the moral of the story is Frankie now does a brunch on New Year's morning. Bill does, across the street, does a 4th of July barbecue. We do Thanksgiving. We invite all of the neighbors to it. We all have each other's keys when we go out of town. We watch each other's dogs, all that stuff. We build community. And San Diego is considered to be one of the top loneliest cities in the country. Have you heard that? There's a book called Bowling Alone, and it listed San Diego as one of. I think part of it is we're all immigrants from other parts of the country, so we don't know too many people. We have big spaces on our lawns. We don't have porches where we hang out in front and all that stuff. We come in home, we park the car, we go right inside and lock the door. So could you be a missionary in your own neighborhood?
That's also true of communities that have the Episcopal Church here, and then down the street is the Presbyterian Church and so forth, to interact with them and have the barbecue sort of thing. And that would attract people, just generally, what's going on here.
Yeah, so what was my agenda for doing that, by the way? Was that agenda to evangelize my neighborhood, get them all to come to the cathedral? No, because I wasn't even coming to the cathedral when I did that. I wasn't even a Christian yet, I wasn't baptized. I was trying to just build community. But as my relationship with God has changed, I started to have a different way of seeing that community building work that I was doing normally in the neighborhood. I started seeing it differently. And so all of them came to my wedding at the cathedral. One of them was at a funeral for a neighbor at the cathedral. I would say probably many of them would consider the cathedral their spiritual home at this point, even though they're not regular pledging members. So there's something happening there, right? But that's not the agenda. Okay, so I'm getting the sign of
My 30 seconds, the goal of outreach and evangelism, I guess they could go hand in hand. The focus that I'm looking at is just keeping the people that we already have in the church. You sort of showed a slide where the percentage of people?
Come to a class at what time, Mark? What time is yours? 3? Mine? Yeah. Mine starts in 3 minutes. Okay, stay for this class, and then you'll get a great answer to that. Okay. All right. Thanks everybody. This is great. Are you ready?